Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of Getting In, a College Coach Conversation. My name is Ian Fisher. I'm going to be your host for today, and we're recording this on July 23rd. It's going to be July 30th by the time you're able to listen to this, and we're getting to the sort of dog days of summer and starting to think about the beginning of school again in the fall. We have a really exciting show lined up for you today. A couple of our colleagues from within the education team at Bright Horizons College Coach will be here to talk about how to approach the Common Application essay and some of the ways that you can plan to pay for college in installments in the fall. So you want to stick around for those two sessions. But before we get there, we want to bring another sort of coach to the conversation. One of my colleagues, Anka Sloat, is joining us today. And Anka is a director of learning and development.
That's right.
Okay, got it right. With our learning services division with Bright Horizons. And I'm really excited to welcome Anka to the show. Hi, Anka.
Hello, Ian. It's good to see you.
It's great to have you here. And so I referred to you as a coach. And you actually did some coaching with me a couple of years ago because you are a certified coach using the Clifton Strengths. Am I saying that correctly in terms of what you're...
That is correct. I am a certified Gallup strength coach. So Gallup, the organization, many of you probably aware of, does a lot of research, a lot of reporting, data analysis. They own and administer the Strength Finder personality type assessment. And I am a certified coach helping people understand their talents and their strength a little bit better.
That's right. And you tried to help me better understand myself, and you did as good a job as anybody could do. I still am trying to figure it out. But we're not necessarily bringing you on the show today to talk about my strengths. We could save that for maybe another episode, but to talk about this particular, I would say, tool system for assessing individual strengths. And there are a lot of different things out there that people use when they want to look at what do I have to offer? What's my career path look like? I really like the Gallup Strengths Finder a lot, and it really resonated with me. And I wonder if you could speak a little bit to the general sort of structure of the Strengths Finder in terms of both the inputs and then the outputs, what comes back to the individual.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Yes, right. You can argue that I am converted, but I'm trying to speak as objectively as I can. And you're exactly right, Ian. There is a ton of personality assessments out there. Probably many of you are aware of Myers-Briggs and right. Several others. What I personally really like about Strength Finder is that it focuses on exactly what the word says, on our strength. So often when we look at ourselves, right, we look at weaknesses and we try to fix ourselves and we try to, where do we need to get better? And Strength Finder is really putting this on its head to say, here is what naturally is given to us in regards to talents, what comes easy to us, what energizes us. And let's lean into those talents, turn them really into strength to become the best self that we can be.
That's right. And I think one of the things, I mean, we'll get to this a little bit later on, potentially in the conversation. One of the terms that you sort of really inspired me to use more often is, instead of thinking about weaknesses, we think about our lesser strengths. Right. So we have our top strengths, which are the things that are really sort of fluid and easy for us to use. We go to them often. They're the first tools we reach for in the toolbox when we're working through a problem. And then we have other strengths that maybe we don't use as frequently, but we don't necessarily consider them to be weaknesses. We're still working on improving those things. And I think that language was really helpful for me. Can you speak a little bit to that sort of concept of strengths being, coming in different sort of doses across a particular person, and how that person can leverage that information?
Yes, yeah. So as you said, maybe I'll take a moment just to talk a little bit about the technicality of or
Please.
The assessment, right? Because you set the top and then the lesser strength. So once someone takes the assessment, you can either get your top 5. There's a total of 34, or you can take the assessment to get all 34. I usually recommend that people start with their 5 because 5 doesn't sound like a big number, but I actually think
It
it
is.
is.
Yeah.
To really embrace and lean into our top 5 and really make them our own. But then exactly to your point, then there isn't a cutoff to say, and now all the other 29 are weaknesses. No,
Right.
they're lesser strength, things that maybe don't come as natural to us. And just to use an example, speaking of myself, my higher strength are in what's considered relationship building. So I get energized by interacting with people, and particularly in smaller groups and one-on-one. Someone else may have top strength in the area of executing. So they get enjoyment, they get energized by getting things accomplished. They're the ones to always raise their hand first and say, hey, I want to do this. I want to get this done. They're the list makers. Let me tell you, I'm a list maker too, but once I've made the list, I don't look at it.
Right.
But there's lots of people who look at the list, and that is what motivates them to actually check the things on their list off. And so there are just these differences. It doesn't mean that I can't get things done, but it's not necessarily my initial driver. Or I have to build a relationship first. That is what energizes me to work on something, to get something accomplished.
Yeah, and there are I think 4 different categories of the strengths, right? And just sort of seeing how you sort of pull from those different categories within your top 5, and then if you do get all 34, you can see sort of where some of your top strengths tend to be. I think that's really, really informative, and just awareness is really helpful to say, okay, these things are easier for me. These other things maybe are a little bit more challenging. And so I can be more intentional in terms of working in that space, right? So relationship building for me is not one of my top categories of strengths. I have more of a strategic set of strengths are at the top end. And so that means that when I'm in a situation where relationship building is essential, I'm working harder in that space and aware of that to help compensate for potentially that being a lesser strength than another one that I might have. I want to talk a little bit about sort of the process of taking this assessment, because it's a really unusual test in that a lot of I wouldn't even call it a test. It's just sort of, describe how you feel on this. And so you're
That's
more
right.
or less, and the context, I think, for the questions is sort of up to the person who's taking it. Are you thinking about yourself at home? Are you thinking about yourself at work? Are you thinking about yourself in relationship to your friends? Can you speak a little bit to that process of actually asking the questions and how respondents use those?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Yes, and I love that you just said let's not call it a test, because there's no right
Right.
or wrong. That is
Right.
very important. And so you're exactly right. There is a series of questions that you are asked to respond to. What resonates more with you, this answer or that? And then there is a range where you sort of kind of fall. And what Gallup says is find a space where you can be uninterrupted for about 45 minutes. I don't think it takes quite that long,
Yeah.
but people should be in a space where they can focus and pay attention to. At the same time, you shouldn't overthink it and just rather quickly respond to how you, right, what resonates, as I
Right.
said, with you more than whatnot. I sometimes hear from people that say, gosh, it was so hard. I didn't know I was somewhere in the middle. But that's exactly who you are, or that
Right.
tells us something, right? If you actually select a middle. So again, it's important to say it's not a test. There is no right or wrong answers here. It's really an assessment where our talents and our strengths fall. And so the more relaxed, I guess I would say you are, the less uninterrupted, I think the more accurate the result comes up. And often, I mean, the majority of time when I meet with people, they say, how did they do this? What kind of sorcery is that? It was me to the T, or it created so much clarity about things that I sort of kind of knew about me anyway. But to now have that language and to now get more clarity on what these things actually are, give it a name, has been very helpful for people.
Yeah, it's I think, I've taken a lot of different kinds of assessments, or maybe even something as silly as a BuzzFeed quiz, right? And you can kind of tell as you're taking these tests what the questions are pointing you towards. So you can kind of think, okay, I feel like if I answer in this way, it's going to lead me towards the result that I'm looking for. I want to end up categorized in a particular way, and so I'm going to do that. And this approach, I think, both because people tend to be unfamiliar with the strengths as named until after they've taken the assessment. And because there's no clear way to see a link between what question is being asked and how they're going to fit in those strengths, means that you can really naturally respond to them without being worried about being boxed in a particular way, or trying to drive the answer in a particular direction. And that's one thing that I really liked about this. When I do a Myers-Briggs, I know what all the different Myers-Briggs types are. And I'm like, I think I'm going to kind of answer it in this direction because I want to be pushed towards that INTJ, right? Or whatever, the assessment is that I'm looking for. Now, we've used this in a professional setting, right? We've done this within our team at College Coach, and it's been very helpful for us to understand whose strengths fit in different ways, and especially how to build teams, because you can put people with different kinds of strengths together, and then they can work on a task in a really interesting and exciting and complementary way. Can you speak a little bit to whether this is something that is often used for younger students, maybe in high school, maybe in college, and what sort of the research is on that?
Yeah. So actually, a fairly recent development is that a lot of university and colleges now use the assessment for their student population. And I know of several institutions, and actually the Gallup website shares some stories. There's some video testimonials there, because the organizations say it tells our student body so much about who they are, again, what energizes them, right? What their natural tendencies are. And it helps them in organizations maybe that they get involved with on campus, student organizations, what have you. And it can also inform, a little bit more, give them more insight in who they are. And I think it's interesting because maybe for younger people, I should speak for myself. When I was a teenager, I wasn't always maybe super happy with who I was or who I thought I was. And so I think getting some clarity even early on or during these very important developmental years, I think can be really helpful, just to get, again, some clarity on why is it that what my friends were doing really bothered me, or why am I drawn to X, Y, and Z? Why am I drawn to this particular subject, right? Or what type of study, what have you. So I think it can be really, really helpful. I do want to say here a point of caution that StrengthsFinder should not be used to identify like an ideal career or an ideal job. Right. And Gallup actually feels really strongly about this, and then I believe that too. They don't have a list to say, if you want to be a successful teacher, you need to have X, Y, and Z strength. If you want to be a top-notch salesperson, yes, it's the opposite. Our talents, our strength can inform how we potentially might teach, right? Do we lead more with our relationship building strength, or do we lead more with our strategy, where it just comes natural to us to learn, and then hopefully that enthusiasm, right, gets then directed towards our students. And so I feel very strongly about that. So it shouldn't be used to say, okay, let me take the assessment and then I can figure out what my perfect career might be. But it could really inform, I should find a job where I have an opportunity to interact and engage with people all the time, or where I have access to data or information, what have you.
I think that's right on. It's not something that I think gives you the destination, but it gives you a sense for how you're going to walk that path and what you're going to draw upon as you go through it. And one of the things that I was really excited by in the conversation that you and I had when we were doing that strengths coaching session was the concept of the balconies and the basements. So for each strength that you might have, it has a balcony, which is sort of the best expression of that strength. And it has a basement, which is the not so great expression of that strength. And just for example, one of my top 5 is command. And so command is a strength that puts you in a position to be a leader, to, get people together, to make sure that things are organized. That has a very clear balcony, but it also has a basement, which is this sort of need to take charge and to speak up and to be a person who is responsible, even in a case where it might not necessarily fit. Now, that would have been something that would have been great for me to know in college. I didn't learn it until I was, in my early 30s, but it's exactly that kind of thing where I think having some awareness of your strengths and what those balconies and basements might be can really help you to figure out how to engage with others and how to engage with projects. So I love this thing. I think it's really, really terrific. Are there any things that, like, someone can go and take the assessment? You can find it online. I think there's a fee associated with taking it, but they had a big discount on it fairly recently. The result is awesome. You can read your specific sort of results on that Strengths Finder, which I would highly recommend. If you're interested in this, you take advantage of that. Are there some things that you've learned, just as sort of final thoughts here, through the coaching experience and through, being this certified strengths coach? Are there elements of this that you think are really helpful for people to be aware of if they're considering taking the assessment?
Yeah, just a few things. I would say exactly reiterate what you said. Take advantage of all the information that Gallup gives you after you take the assessment. If you're still someone like me who likes paper printed out or save it somewhere, really read through the reports and the and and with that, though, feel free to cross things out that don't speak to you. I mean, it is a bit of a machine, right? It is a robot behind the scenes that puts it all together. So if there are things that don't resonate, don't be too worried about that. And then I would say start really paying attention of how and when these talents and these strengths show up for you, so that it's not a point in time exercise, but that it's ongoing.
Yeah.
And see if there's others that have taken the assessment as well. I see the strength literally and the power in numbers, because my team, we've all taken it. And so we all speak the same language and we continue to talk about it. Maybe it is something for a group of friends or family or a club that you're a part of right now.
Yeah. And I just love this as more information gathering. I think that a lot of students they'll come to me and they'll say, I don't know how to figure out what I want to study in college or even what I'm looking for. And often the first step is some knowledge of self. And this is just one more tool, I think, to engage with yourself. And at first it feels very, you look at it and you're like, what are these strengths? What are these names? I don't know how this fits. But then when you actually start to read through the detailed feedback, you start to see how it fits you. And I just think it's a really, really helpful system for self-assessment. Yeah, Anka, I mean, we ran out of time very quickly. I'm not surprised. But I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and helping some of our listeners understand the Strengths Finder.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Folks, when we come back, we are going to talk about the Common App personal statement. So don't go away.